The folder slid across the Christmas table so softly, it didn't make a single sound. His mother pushed it with 2 fingers right between the sweet potatoes and the bread basket, her smile perfectly frozen and completely ice cold. She looked down her nose at me and said, "We think this is best before we move forward with the wedding. Drop a comment right now showing where you're watching this video from, because what I did next changed their wealthy family forever." The silence in that dining room became heavy enough to choke on. My fiancée, Danielle, wouldn't look at me. His eyes were glued to his porcelain plate, his knuckles turning white around his silver fork. Across from him, his father sat perfectly rigid, thick fingers intertwined over his silk tie, like a corporate executive preparing to terminate a low-level employee rather than a patriarch hosting a festive family dinner. His sister took a slow, deliberate sip of her expensive red wine, looking everywhere except at my worn tweed jacket, carefully pretending to be completely detached from the trap they had just sprung. I let my hand rest flat against the cool leather surface of the folder, deliberately choosing not to open it immediately, because I didn't need to look at the first page to recognize exactly what it was. It was a prenuptial agreement, but not the kind crafted by reasonable people seeking mutual security. This was a weaponized variety used by old money to remind an outsider precisely where he belonged on the social ladder. They genuinely believed they were dealing with a simple, broke administrative clerk from the nearby military base who had somehow managed to charm her vulnerable, wealthy son. For nearly 2 decades, I had served in the United States Marine Corps, navigating high-stakes environments where generals made choices governing human life, burying brave brothers in arms, and writing agonizing condolence letters to devastated mothers. I understood the mechanics of institutional power, and more importantly, I recognized the distinct passive-aggressive cruelty small-minded individuals display when they assume someone else possesses no leverage. Sitting under their dazzling, multicolored Christmas tree lights while the kitchen timer buzzed faintly in the background, a sharp sensation cut through my chest that felt significantly colder than mere anger. The betrayal didn't stem from the document itself, but from the realization that Danielle already knew about this scheme, evident by the cowardly way he kept his chin buried in his chest. That exact second was when I understood that before exchanging vows with this man, I desperately needed to discover whether superficial affection could ever compensate for a fundamental lack of moral courage. But our relationship hadn't always felt this suffocating. It actually commenced 3 weeks earlier on a crisp, overcast December morning when Danielle stood in my kitchen, cradling a mug of black coffee with a brilliant, carefree smile. He enthusiastically announced that his parents were finally ready to host a formal dinner to get to know me properly, completely unaware that I was quietly reviewing classified morning briefings on my tablet. My clean, modest townhouse located just outside Quantico bore absolutely no resemblance to the sprawling estates of his childhood, lacking expensive artwork or flashy furniture that might tip off an average observer that the quiet man living there earned a substantial military salary. I had intentionally constructed this private, unpretentious existence after years of rigid salutes, constant scrutiny, and being judged exclusively by the insignia pinned to my chest. Danielle genuinely believed my employment involved mundane paperwork at a low-level desk on the installation, often praising my reliability with a patronizing sweetness that I initially mistook for genuine devotion. I let him maintain that fiction not because I enjoyed deceit, but because I was absolutely starved for an authentic human connection that had nothing to do with my professional authority. I desperately wanted one person in this chaotic world to see the man behind the uniform before discovering the massive influence I wielded, which is why I never corrected his naive assumptions. At 38 years old, I was a major general in the Marine Corps, managing significant national security responsibilities while pulling in a monthly base pay exceeding $18,000 before taxes. With a fully paid-off property, guaranteed pension, and diverse investments, I could easily retire tomorrow to live in absolute comfort, but none of those material realities mattered even half as much to me as testing the true measure of my future spouse's character under pressure. Properly? I had asked him back then, my voice carrying a dry, amused edge while setting my tablet down on the granite countertop. Danielle laughed quickly, waving a hand as if dismissing some minor detail, telling me his mother had simply been preoccupied during our brief 10-minute introduction at that crowded autumn charity gala. He promised this occasion would feel completely different, describing a relaxed, intimate holiday gathering meant exclusively for immediate family members. I distinctly recall the prolonged pause I utilized before offering any response, a calculated moment of stillness that caused his cheerful demeanor to falter slightly. When he nervously questioned my hesitation, I looked him dead in the eye and remarked that his mother hadn't seemed distracted at all during our initial encounter. She had looked utterly disappointed. He immediately offered that helpless, boyish half-smile he habitually deployed to smooth over uncomfortable realities, without ever confronting their underlying causes, whispering that she just needed time to comprehend my background. That was the core issue with my fiancé. He functioned as a perfectly decent companion in mundane, everyday ways, like remembering my exact beverage preferences or checking the motor oil in my vehicle without being asked. He kept his suits immaculate, routinely assisted elderly neighbors, and carried heavy grocery bags from my trunk without a single complaint. But he had been conditioned by a household where preserving superficial tranquility mattered far more than facing raw truth. Whenever his elite parents entered the room, his entire spine seemed to liquefy, shrinking his personality until he became a ghost of the man I loved. He wouldn't outright lie, but he actively permitted false narratives to solidify into absolute facts rather than risk a tense conversation with his wealthy lineage. When I pressed him about what specific details he had shared regarding my life, his eyebrows shot upward with telling speed, stammering that he merely mentioned my employment at the base before shrugging his shoulders as if that summarized everything. It would have been incredibly simple right then to drop my guard, look him in the face, and declare that I wasn't some replaceable paper pusher, but a high-ranking military officer who possessed enough personal wealth to buy their family estate. Yet, a deeper instinct resisted that easy exit, a profound curiosity born from spending decades surrounded by old money, institutional power, and defensive upper-class anxiety. I knew these people measure human worth not by their own achievements, but by how effectively they could look down upon anyone they deemed socioeconomically inferior. Danielle's family descended from old East Coast comfort, the kind of insulated wealth wrapped in country club memberships, pristine haircuts, and a desperate terror of social embarrassment. I had observed these ruthless matriarchs my entire life. Women with sugary voices, predatory eyes, and a habit of being exceptionally generous in public while remaining viciously demanding behind closed doors. I suddenly realized this dinner presented a flawless crucible to observe the unvarnished reality of the family I was about to legally bind myself to. After he departed for his office, I stood completely motionless in my silent kitchen, letting my coffee grow stone cold while constructing a deliberate plan. I marched upstairs to my closet, bypassing the tailored civilian suits and high-end formal, where I maintained for official military functions, and pulled out the oldest winter garment I owned. It was a faded brown wool overcoat, perfectly clean and presentable, but showing undeniable signs of wear around the cuffs. The exact type of clothing wealthy elites categorize as exhausting. My late mother, who had raised me single-handedly in a tiny North Carolina town while working 26 years in the county archives, always told me that an individual of true substance never needs to announce his importance. She possessed a brilliant golden rule for navigating a judgmental world. If you truly desire to see a person's authentic soul, allow them to believe you are entirely useless to their ambitions. Her voice echoed with crystalline clarity through my mind that morning, solidifying my ultimate strategy for the upcoming Christmas Eve confrontation. I resolved to arrive at their mansion dressed with absolute simplicity, wearing zero jewelry, stripped of every professional indicator, and projecting the aura of a timid, unremarkable clerk. I wanted to see exactly how they would treat a man they believed brought nothing to their table, forcing them to reveal their unedited characters before I made the biggest mistake of my life. The drive to their brick estate in the Maryland suburbs felt like a slow march toward a battlefront. Christmas lights flashed on manicured lawns, projecting a calculated warmth that felt entirely manufactured. Danielle kept squeezing my hand, repeating that everything would be wonderful once his family witnessed my pleasant disposition, totally oblivious to the heavy trap he had allowed his parents to build. When we finally crossed the threshold of their home, the air smelled of expensive pine needles and roasted meat, yet the atmosphere within those high-ceiling rooms felt incredibly suffocating. His mother greeted us with a plastic, razor-sharp smile, her manicured fingers brushing against my worn wool sleeves with an immediate flick of quiet condescension. His father, a towering patriarch with a stiff spine, offered a practiced rigid handshake, while his calculating eyes instantly evaluated my cheap shoes and plain shirt. During the initial hours, the interrogation remained masked as polite conversation over a beautifully set dining table overflowing with fine china and crystal glassware. They repeatedly questioned my daily routines at the base, subtly tracking my financial stability, family history, and long-term retirement expectations. I kept my answers incredibly brief, playing my quiet role perfectly while watching Danielle shrink further into a seat with every passing minute. Then, right after the main course was cleared, the polite facade vanished entirely, replaced by a cold, transactional ambush. His mother reached beside her chair, retrieved that thick leather document, and smoothly glided it over the polish wood right toward my water glass. "We must protect our lineage from complications arising from different socioeconomic backgrounds," she stated smoothly, her tone leaving absolutely no room for negotiation. I slowly turned first page, my eyes scanning the predatory clauses designed to strip me of any marital rights, asset sharing, or legal dignity before I even uttered my wedding vows. On the margins, her sharp handwriting detailed strict demands about venue deposits and financial disclosures, treating my entire future like a bad business liability. I raised my gaze, expecting my fiancé to finally find his spine, to stand up against this blatant insult, but he simply stared at a silver fork, utterly paralyzed by fear. That was a precise moment the temperature in the room plummeted to absolute zero as I leaned forward, closed the binder with a sharp thud, and let the raw power dynamics shift. I looked at the 3A leaders sitting across from me, their faces filled with arrogant satisfaction, completely unaware that they had just targeted a 2-star military officer who commanded thousands of troops. Is this truly how you treat a man you believe possesses nothing to offer your family? The question hung in the air like a heavy mist, suffocating the celebratory holiday atmosphere. Danielle's mother adjusted her diamond necklace, her eyes narrowing as she attempted to process the sudden change in my vocal cadence. The submissive, soft-spoken clerk they thought they were managing had vanished, replaced by a man whose posture radiated absolute, dangerous authority. His father slammed his palms flat against a mahogany table, shouting that they wouldn't tolerate disrespect in their own home over a standard legal precaution. Danielle finally found his voice, stammering that his family was merely trying to avoid future complications, begging me not to cause a scene before the holidays. I turned my head slowly, locking my eyes onto my fiancé until he visibly flinched under a gaze that had broken seasoned battlefield commanders. I asked him directly if he truly believed hiding this document from me until Christmas Eve was an act of maturity, or if he was simply too terrified to stand up against his parents' control. He swallowed hard, his face flushing crimson as his sister chimed in, sneering that people from my background always get defensive when real money enters the discussion. I ignored her entirely, focusing my attention back on the patriarch, who was currently pouring himself another glass of wine with trembling hands. I asked him to clarify the exact net worth of the family trust they were so desperately trying to shield from an outsider. The question was a direct breach of upper-class etiquette, causing his mother to gasp while his father growled that their private finances were absolutely none of my business. I smiled coldly, reminding them that they had just demanded total access to my life while expecting me to remain completely blind to theirs. Then, I decided to dismantle their sense of security entirely by mentioning the secret, outstanding business line of credit Danielle had opened 2 years ago. The color completely drained from my fiancé's face, his eyes widening with pure terror as his sister turned on him, demanding to know what hidden liabilities he'd been concealing from the family business. His father's arrogant demeanor shattered into absolute confusion, realizing the quiet man in the worn coat possessed far more dangerous intelligence than anyone could have ever anticipated. The psychological warfare inside that dining room escalated to a blistering peak. Danielle kept shaking his head, whispering frantically that his corporate liabilities had been completely resolved, but the seeds of domestic distrust were already blooming among his relatives. His sister demanded to see the physical records, while their mother looked as though she might faint straight into her porcelain dessert bowl. The pristine, tightly controlled narrative of old money superiority they spent decades constructing had shattered over a single festive evening. His father leaned across the table, his knuckles turning white, demanding to know exactly how a low-level base clerk possessed access to private corporate data. I let a long, agonizing pause stretch between us, savoring the frantic look of panic dancing across their wealthy faces before I spoke. I told them that when you spend your entire life assuming someone is beneath your notice, you tend to speak far too loudly in their presence. I reminded them of the charity gala where his mother had gossiped openly with an attorney while I stood just 3 feet away, carrying their discarded beverage glasses. They had treated me like a ghost, an invisible servant who couldn't possibly comprehend their high society discussions or financial maneuvers. Danielle finally reached across the table, his voice cracking as he begged me to stop this interrogation, asking why I was suddenly acting like an entirely different person. I looked at him with profound disappointment, stating that I had never lied about who I was. I simply allowed his family to display their unvarnished behavior without correction. His mother scoffed, her voice dripping with venom as she claimed that hiding my true nature was a malicious act of deception designed to humiliate them. I shook my head slowly, my voice remaining perfectly calm, level, and lethal as I told her that character is revealed by how you treat those who can do absolutely nothing for you. I stood up from my chair, my tall frame casting a massive shadow across their expensive holiday centerpieces, effectively ending their ability to look down upon me. I announced my age, my absolute financial independence, and the fact that my personal savings could purchase their entire suburban block without a single loan. Then, I delivered the final, crushing blow to their collective arrogance by revealing my actual rank as a 2-star major general. The absolute silence that followed was deafening. His sister's mouth fell open, his father froze completely mid-breath, and Danielle looked at me as if the ground beneath his feet had just split wide open. The staggering revelation echoed through the opulent dining space like a detonated artillery shell. Danielle's mother sat entirely paralyzed, her manicured fingers clutching her silk napkin so fiercely that her expensive diamond rings dug deep into her skin. The absolute realization that they had spent the entire evening patronizing a highly decorated military commander, a man who dictated high-stakes defense strategies while they gossiped about country club memberships, completely derailed their upper-class composure. His father slowly lowered his wine chalice, his seasoned, arrogant gaze morphing into a chaotic mixture of intense humiliation and profound defensive panic. He tried to stammer an apology, suggesting there had been a massive communication breakdown, but the icy authority radiating from my posture completely cut off his desperate attempt at damage control. I reached down, slowly sliding the heavy leather prenup binder across the polished mahogany until it rested perfectly centered between us like a discarded weapon. I looked directly at Danielle, whose eyes were wide with a devastating mixture of profound shock, confusion, and overwhelming terror as he realized the sheer magnitude of the man he had failed to defend. I asked him a final, quiet question, demanding to know if he truly believed our entire future could be built upon a foundation of cowardice and submissive compliance to his parents' elitist demands. He couldn't even summon a coherent phrase, his lower jaw trembling as his sister quietly pushed her chair back, completely eager to escape the suffocating emotional pressure gridlocking the room. The flickering red and gold holiday lights on her towering tree suddenly felt incredibly hollow, casting grotesque shadows across a family whose superficial dignity had been utterly dismantled by the truth. I let my hand drop to the pocket of my worn wool overcoat, feeling the familiar weight of my absolute independence, completely detached from their desperate need for status or validation. The tension in that room reached an agonizing, breathless crescendo as I leaned forward slightly, preparing to deliver a definitive, crushing blow to their collective arrogance that would permanently sever the fragile ties holding our relationship together. The crushing weight of that endless silence was broken by the sharp, metallic click of my engagement ring sliding across the polished mahogany table. I watched it glide past their fine china, spinning gently before coming to a complete rest directly on top of the predatory legal document they had tried to force upon me. Danielle gasped, reaching out a trembling hand as if he could physically catch the shattered remnants of our relationship, his voice cracking desperately as he begged me to reconsider this sudden, final choice. I looked at him with a profound sense of clarity, stating calmly that I could easily survive the harsh realities of a literal battlefield, but I would never marry a man who lacked the fundamental courage to protect my honor against his own family's malice. His mother tried to intervene, her voice shaking as she offered a rushed, superficial apology about tragic misunderstandings, but I simply raised a single hand, instantly silencing her with the absolute authority of a military commander. I slid my arms into the worn wool overcoat, feeling a deep, comforting sense of pride in the humble garment that had successfully exposed the unvarnished rot hidden beneath their dazzling high society facade. Turning away from their stunned, pale faces without uttering another syllable, I marched down their grand hallway, opened the heavy front door, and stepped out into the crisp, biting winter darkness. The freezing night air hit my face like a refreshing wake-up call, washing away the suffocating layer of deceit that had plagued my life for the past 3 weeks. Driving away from their sprawling brick estate, I realized that true wealth has absolutely nothing to do with trust funds, country club status, or pristine family trees. It is measured exclusively by the moral courage you display when nobody is watching. Danielle attempted to salvage our connection over following months, sending long, handwritten letters detailing his ongoing therapy and new personal boundaries. But some structural cracks are simply too deep to ever truly repair. I chose to forgive his weakness from a distance, focusing my energy entirely on leading my troops and honoring the legacy of integrity my late mother had instilled in my soul. If the cinematic journey reminded you to never judge a person's worth by their superficial appearance, please consider sharing this video with someone who needs that powerful reminder today. Thank you for listening to the story of hidden strength, and remember that your dignity is always worth defending, no matter the cost.